everybody, welcome to the week 7 garden tour here at Reach and Reverie. I am so excited to show you everything that has grown this week. Come on, let's go take a look. So I know every week I tend to go into a lot of detail about all of these plants. This week I am going to try to keep it a little more brief. I think I made the video last week just a little too long. I've been sticking to about 30 minutes for these garden tours, and last week I don't know what happened. It was like an hour and 15 minutes into it. I'm like, okay, I talked too much about my plants. So I'm going to try not to go that long today, guys. Let's take a look at what we've got. So my sunflowers over here look like they're getting closer to blooming. My yarrow is doing really good. And I know the other week I had been trying to keep it a surprise what's growing back in this corner, and I spilled the beans. So I'm going to continue to talk about it. This back here is a blue butterfly pea, and I'm really excited that it is starting to grow nicely. It looks nice and green. It's a slow growing plant, at least to start, so I'm not too worried about it. It can take its time. I'm really excited. This week I did add my Peppermint Balsam. I think I added it at the beginning of, or the end of last week, so it made it into last week's garden video, but I had just planted it. So this peppermint stick balsam has gorgeous serrated leaves, and it's starting to put on blossoms all up this stem. So it's going to start blooming really soon. My catnip is doing wonderful, as well as my blue Cereus sage. Something today got to my Mexican mint. That was a beautiful plant this morning, and there next to it's another Mexican mint that's doing just fine, but something came and grabbed him, so I don't know. He might come back. I'm going to let him be and see if he can recover from whatever ate him. And then I have some other herbs down here. This French breakfast radish is continuing to grow massively, and he's doing pretty good. I do see a ton of roly-polies at his base. I hope that's not going to be a problem, but as of now I am letting this guy grow until he bolts, and I plan on collecting seeds from him. My Market More cucumber has started to flower, and he's almost big enough to reach the trellis. So once he starts touching the trellis, I'm going to start weaving him in and out so he can grow up on this fence, so we can have some nice cucumbers. And the reason why you want to grow a plant like this up on a trellis is to help prevent airflow, and it's going to keep the fruit from sitting on the ground. So it's going to help keep your plant healthier for longer and hopefully producing for longer. My cantaloupe over here is growing nice and healthy, slow as ever. Cantaloupe, from my gardening experience this year, has shown me that you just really got to be patient. It doesn't grow quite as fast as the other squash varieties that I have, or melon, squash and melon varieties. My cilantro has burst this week, and it's grown a lot. It doesn't like how intense the heat is out here, and it does have a little bit of sun stress on the leaves, but it is growing nice and big. Oh, my love, vying for my attention. Every time I do any gardening, she always comes and stands out here and wants some pets. All right. These beans are doing really good. They have climbed up the trellis. All of them are up over the top, but none of them are flowering yet. I'm going to keep watching these because I want some beans pretty soon. I see you, crazy. I see you. If you guys stay tuned to the end of this video, we do have some exciting news we want to share with you guys. Jardil pumpkin is doing really nicely, and so are my lavender and toothache seedlings. You found me, my love. The Jardil is coming all the way out here. Look at that. And then my acorn squash I have planted in here is getting a lot bigger this week as well. My sunflower right here, look at that. He is just on the cusp of flowering. I think he's going to flower any day now. That's going to open up and just be stunning. My watermelon has decided to come out of the pot, and he's flowering too. He has a ton of flowers. He puts a flower like every other day, And as these flowers are opening up, the other ones are closing. I don't think any of them have been fertilized yet because they're all falling off. It might be the heat, but for whatever reason, we're losing our blossoms. I'm hoping that if they fertilize, they'll stay on there and we might get an ancient watermelon yet. Nasturtiums are growing a little bit this week. Overall doing pretty good. And this cucamelon looks gorgeous. Look at those nice dark leaves. She's my little Velcro dog. She comes and she sticks on you. These tomatillos are looking great. I might have to support them a little better pretty soon because we're getting a lot of wind. You might be able to hear it, but in the background, this tree is blowing. For whatever reason, I'm not sure why, but all of the tomatoes in this section are just getting these spots on their leaves. I don't know what that is, but overall they are growing pretty nicely. This is my Husky red cherry tomato. I saw the other day that we have a little tiny cherry tomato right there. So pretty soon we're gonna have some juicy red tomatoes from this Husky red. My Blue Beauty tomatoes right here are doing pretty good. I haven't seen any fruit set yet. So that means that they are producing flowers, but we haven't been pollinated and producing fruit yet. I'm gonna keep checking on these guys. We'll get some pretty soon. In this flower bed, I have my Vinca. I have 3 of them right here. And I thought that I was a little worried about them because they were really root bound and it was in one pot and I had to separate the roots to plant them out. And they haven't skipped a beat. They're still putting off flower buds and flowering nicely. This is just beautiful pastel pink. It's gorgeous. Over here, this is a Blue Beauty tomato trimming. I was pruning my tomatoes and I was cutting off suckers. And a sucker, if y'all haven't been following my channel for very long, a sucker is a branch that grows out of the armpit of one of your tomato plants, and it takes nutrients from the plant. It's going to produce a lot of green leafiness, but it's going to reduce the circulation, the airflow that can get to your plant, and it's going to take a lot of energy away from making fruit. So in all of the tomato plants that I have growing in the back garden bed, I am pulling off suckers. So this sucker had missed my attention until it was about 10 to 12 inches long. So by the time I got it and cut it, it was just this massive long sucker. So I went ahead and pruned that off and stuck it in the ground all the way up to the crown of this plant. And for a few days it was stressed, but now it's bouncing back and it's a healthy tomato plant. And this is great. I have this guy growing as a backup because one of my other tomatoes in the back garden bed's not doing very well. And if I have to pull that one out, I'm gonna place him in that spot. And then right here, this is my red bell pepper plant that was given to me as a gift from my amazing work. When I reached 1 year anniversary at the place that I work, they gifted me this beautiful pepper plant. So I put him to good use. He's in this pot and hopefully he'll start making me some juicy red bell peppers here pretty soon. Let's go take a look at the back garden. Hey girls. Hey Miss Pip. Hi Miss Mary. How are y'all doing? You cute chickens. Yeah, you're cute chickens. I love my chickens. You're not sure about the camera, Pip. Hey Sunisa. Hey Yasha. Hey Odette. They always come and check if I have treats. Hi Molly. Hey Miss Myrtle. Alright, so here, before we go into the back garden bed, I'm really excited to show you the cucamelon this week. So this one we have planted in a hanging pot, and this is one plant, and it shoots off arms every now and then. You see them? They go in all kinds of directions, and one of them has started to grow around the pot. Look at that. So I just kind of help him, and as he grows I stick him in another part of the pot, and I'm trying to grow him all the way around this hanging planter. Now he also goes up, and he goes all the way up around. He gets almost to the main part of this pine tree, and now he's coming back. And we plan on growing him up this branch, so we'll have beautiful hanging cucamelon vines. And something I noticed the other day is we have a cucamelon fruit right there that's starting to form. So we might be eating some cucamelons here pretty soon. Isn't that just the coolest thing? I've never grown cucamelons before, and they've been taking a really, really slow start. So I am just extremely excited to finally get some fruit on those things. In this back garden bed, we have the Morning Glory. It's looking a lot better this week. It had been struggling a lot. They still have some of those spots, the same kind of spots we're getting on the tomatoes. I think this might be spots from getting a little bit too much sunlight. But here we are, zone 8B out in West Texas. I started everything really early for my zone. I started probably a month early. So they got a lot of sun exposure. But here we are. This thing is growing up, and it has reached the end of its hanging planter and has gone up into the tree. And now it's climbing up this sweet little pecan tree. It's going to be beautiful when it blooms. The Morning Glory has just this gorgeous bluish purple flower. My cucamelon on this tree trunk is finally getting the idea to go ahead and climb up the trunk. So that's going to be cute if he can start filling out. Anytime I see these little branches that start trying to branch out, I'm going to try to go back and be like, okay, climb up the trunk. And soon enough, it'll get it and it'll start going where you want it to go. But with cucamelons, you got to be patient. They really want to go whichever way they want to go, and they'll only grab on if you just keep at it and keep telling them where to go. My sad parsley plant, which does not like the hot weather that we've been having, is still going on and flowering. This guy I'm leaving in the garden right now because he is attracting beneficial pollinators. I've seen butterflies coming and eating on these beautiful flowers, and I also want this to go to seed so that we can plant some parsley next year as well. In this pot I have a little okra, and I'm not sure what this is. It looks like a pea. It might be a sweet pea, but I did plant some flowers, and I also planted some basil around this plant. And I'm seeing some things germinate, but I'm not positive what everything is. That almost looks like a poppy to me. So we'll see what we get. Say hi.
Could also be a spicy pea.
It might be a spicy pea. That would be cute. We don't have any spicy pea beans though.
Oh.
Just sweet peas and blue butterfly peas. The back garden, it is the sunny time of the day right now. Let me find a better spot. The back garden seems to be doing pretty well this week. What we have been really struggling with is bugs though. So I had been in the beginning of the season spraying a little bit of neem oil to try to keep aphids down and things like flea beetles. But as we've progressed, I really want to get away from using chemicals altogether. So neem oil is a really good chemical to use if you don't want to use any bad pesticides that are going to be harmful to your plants. With neem oil, you can just wash your plant off and not really be worried about, or wash your fruit off and not really be worried about eating and ingesting chemicals. Now, the bad thing about using a chemical like neem oil, even though it's all natural, is that it's also going to kill pollinators. So if you're like in the same boat as me where I'm really having really low pollination, I'm having to hand pollinate some things, and then you go and you spray neem oil on your plant, it's discouraging those pollinators that you do have from going ahead and pollinating your flowers. So I'm not using anything on my garden chemical-wise right now. So because of that, we have had a burst in bugs. But what I do to counter that is this week I have released lacewings, which is a beneficial bug that is native in our area. And lacewings, which we bought online, we get them in a larval and an egg stage. And I have them in these little bags is where I've released them. And the bags are all over the garden. And it's just these little tiny larvae and eggs. And what the larvae do is they eat bad bugs in your garden. Like they'll eat aphids, they'll eat whiteflies, and any other little small bug that's going to eat the nutrients out of your plant. And once that lacewing matures enough to become an adult, it looks to me like a little green dragon thing, and it has clear wings. And if I see one on my plants, I'll pointed out to you. But the adult is a pollinator. It drinks nectar. So it's a super beneficial bug that's going to get rid of the bad bugs in your garden, or at least help keep those at bay. And then once it's an adult, it's going to help pollinate your garden. So that's what we're doing to try to counter out to the bugs. But as I go over this garden, you are going to see a lot of holes in my plants and a lot of damage on these plants. So my corn over here, this is the Dwarf bronze corn. It doesn't seem very dwarf to me. It's growing so fast. Some of the plants are a little stunted, like over here, he's in the shade of my zucchini. So this zucchini, I am trying to keep these leaves out of its way. I do want the zucchini to have enough leaves that it is gonna be able to support its own fruit, but I don't want it to crowd out my corn too much. So every now and then I go and I prune out these big leaves that are gonna shade my corn, just so the corn can have the upper hand here. So the bronze dwarf corn only grows to be about 3.5 feet tall is what it says, and it can have up to 5 ears of corn on each stalk. And so it doesn't need quite as much space as regular corn, which can grow so much bigger. But it's something that we're gonna try here in our garden. It has a lot more protein than normal corn with its red color. We are so excited growing this corn. I hope we get some good stalks of corn, ears of corn this season. I'm in love with some of these variegated leaves that they have. It's pretty neat. Some of them are solid though. Pretty cool. So corn's doing good. My zucchini's doing so good. I probably come out here and prune at least twice a week because I just can't keep up with the growth on this thing. It's constantly growing out and crowding out my marigolds and my corn. So I'm gonna have to come in here and keep cutting off these massive leaves. I put these in a spot where I guess I didn't think ahead. This is where my inexperience as a first-time gardener comes in, and I just didn't know how big zucchini plant was going to grow. So you look online and it says to space them about, give them about 2 to 3 square feet of space, and I'm thinking like, oh, okay, let me just try and see what happens. And it is true, they really do need like 3 square feet of space, and I did not provide that for them. So that's okay. We're still gonna get some zucchini off of these guys, and we're gonna get some corn, and we're gonna have some beautiful flowers, and everybody's just gonna get along, right? My beautiful marigold, I just love this plant. It's such a good, beneficial plant to have in your garden, and you really can just stick it in between your plants, and it's doing fine. Like, I say I need to prune this so that my marigold's not covered up too much, but it is still flowering. It is still going to bring in pollinators, and if anything, I think it's going to benefit a little bit from the shade from my ground cherry and my zucchini, because just look at those leaves. I think that right there comes from just so much direct sunlight that we get out here in the Chihuahuan Desert here of far, far west Texas where we live. My ground cherries, which are, it's a plant right here and right here, they're doing fantastic. Fantastic. Now these guys are starting to get some holes in their leaves. You can see that they're getting eaten on, but look at this. They are starting to bear fruit. We have had flowers and now we're having fruit set. Look at that. That right there is a ground cherry. What's really neat about the ground cherry is you never have to worry about knowing when the fruit is ready to pick, because it's called a ground cherry because when the fruit is ripe, it's actually going to fall and you just pick them up off the ground. So I'm going to keep looking at underneath these ground cherries, and anytime I see any fruit under here, I'm going to pick them up, and that is how we're going to know when it's ready. And guys, stay tuned, because as soon as I see that a ground cherry falls on the ground, I'm going to try to my best to get it on camera and show you my first impression tasting these ground cherries. But just looking at it, I can count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, at least 8, 9, at least 10 fruit that are starting to develop on this plant. And that's just one of my 2 plants. So we're so excited about this snack. Ground cherries are supposed to taste like really sweet, tart, almost like a mango pineapple flavor. And we've never tried them yet, but we're so excited to get the chance to try these things. They have just really cute, beautiful little yellow and black star-shaped flowers. They look like miniature tomatillos to me. They're in the same family. They're very closely related. You can hardly tell the difference between my tomatillo leaf and the ground cherry leaf. Over here, I have my nice Blue Beauty tomato that's in the ground. So in the front we saw in a 5-gallon bucket my Blue Beauty tomatoes. I also have them in the ground over here and then in the garden back here. All of my Blue Beauty tomatoes are the exact same age, but they are in various stages of development and growth and success, which I think is based on where I've planted them. But what I'm doing this year is I'm trying to compare what grows well and what's the best way to grow tomatoes, especially indeterminate tomatoes out here in the region where I live out in West Texas. So we had been following along on the journey my beefsteak tomato that I had right here, and as we know, the past few weeks he's been dealing with a broken stem. Well, this week he broke completely in half. Even with the steak, he just wasn't having it. So what I did was I pulled the roots out of the ground, pruned him down to just his crown, and put his entire stalk, which was probably 18 inches, into the soil so that he could try to grow roots and continue to grow. And he is still stressed. He is still alive, and I'm starting to be a little more doubtful if we're gonna get any production on this guy this year. It looks to me like he just might not make it, but I'm gonna keep watering him, and I'm gonna give him probably at least another week before I pull him up and plant my backup in here, because he has been such a fighter this whole time. I still know that he might be able to come back from this if I just keep letting him do his thing. Just whenever you think it's too late, don't give up on your plants. Give them a fighting chance. They might make it. Because this is what that other branch looked like when I stuck him in the ground. I do know that the smaller the section of plant you try to transplant and grow roots from, the better success you're going to have. He was a really big tomato plant, so he's going to have to try a lot harder and put a lot more energy into a new root system. So we don't know if it can be done, but this year's all about experience and learning, so you know I'm going to try. So next week he might not be there, but I'm still going to give him a few more days to see if he can bounce back. He might. I have my black Hungarian jalapenos. These are the little stunted ones that I think got a little cold when they were germinating. So they're not going to ever be as big as the jalapenos I have in the raised garden bed, but they still might grow fruit, and I just think they're gorgeous. They're all really healthy. They're like just little miniature jalapeno plants. And you know what they say about peppers? They like to hold hands. So I went ahead and planted the 3 of these in one pot because I think it's going to be neat. Even if they do grow up really big, they're going to be able to hold hands with their leaves. This week I did start harvesting some of my fennel, just some of the leaves that weren't doing as good. And you know what's the coolest thing about fennel? It smells just like black licorice and tastes like black licorice. I just think it's so neat. It's like your own organic, homegrown, all natural version of a Twizzler. It's pretty cool. He's still making off new growth, but he has not been liking our really warm spring season that we've been having. I think he might need just a little more shade. So if I grow fennel next year, I'm going to put him in a little bit shadier spot than what we have him in here. My pansies, in this pot, I have 2 plants, and you can see 2 growth strategies. This one is nice and full and beautiful. This one's a little bit leggy. Hopefully they both give me some beautiful black flowers though. Overall, these plants are doing okay. Some of them haven't germinated yet. Everything in this area are going to be flowers that are going to hopefully help attract more pollinators to our garden. On the other side of our first garden bed, you see the purple Tomatillo. This purple Tomatillo has reached the top of this cage. This is basically at collarbone height to me, and I am 5'8" tall. So it's getting really massive. And this week I did go ahead and prune a branch. There was a branch that was growing all the way across here, and I just decided to get rid of it. There's plenty of space for these tomatillos to grow, but as soon as they start getting in the way here, they gotta go. I've been seeing a ton of predators on this plant, like praying mantises and lacewings, so that's really encouraging. And I even have a tomatillo that has been fertilized and is starting to develop fruit right there. It's gonna be a nice, juicy purple tomatillo for my purple enchiladas I really want to make this year. Still making ton of flowers. I'm hoping we start getting more. I haven't seen very many actually getting pollinated, so I'm gonna keep watching them, and I might start hand pollinating this plant again because we really want tomatillos. This is another one of my zucchinis. This one's the dark green. On the other side's the Black Beauty zucchini. They're doing good. Putting off flowers. You can see I pruned a ton of stems on that guy. My cantaloupe over here, he's hiding underneath my butternut squash. That's his head right there. He's flowering, so maybe we'll get some cantaloupe pretty soon. I have to come out here every day and try to train my squash to grow up, because when I don't, they start doing this. They start growing towards the chickens, and the chickens keep eating off the tops of my squash. So every single day I have to come out here and try to train them, because if I miss one day, then they end up like this. Where those arms that reach out to grow just get eaten by the chickens. So we'll see. I keep checking. We're getting a lot of flowers, but not a whole lot of pollination on these plants. We'll see. There's tons of flowers developing and forming, so that's really encouraging. I really want to get some butternut squash and some acorn squash and some Jardel pumpkins. So stay tuned. I'll keep y'all guys updated. In the back corner, we have my okra. And he's getting really big this week. I think he took a big leap and grew quite a bit this week. He has produced one flower. We don't see any fruit yet, but I'm keeping my eyes peeled. Peeled for the fruit. In this bed we have Artcomb's Ancient Watermelon. He hasn't produced any flowers yet, but he's been growing so much. Look at that. This plant overflows and goes out another 3 feet and ends right there. It's beautiful. Kale's growing strong still. Nice and crisp. Amazing. Now my broccoli, I do think I'm going to pull out, because this is what he's doing. He's getting eaten up. Which, you know, it makes sense for this time of year with brassicas. I kind of knew we were on a time crunch with this guy, but he is getting eaten, so I'm probably going to pull him and give the rest of the leaves to the chickens and plant something else in this pot, because real estate is precious when you have to do square foot gardening in a space like this. I noticed that the zinnias right next to my broccoli are also getting eaten, so that's another reason I want to pull this guy out, is I don't want him to attract bugs that are going to get into the rest of my plants. Swiss chard's doing pretty good. I've been harvesting a few leaves off of him every now and then. This is 5 plants in this little pot. Blue butterfly pea, also doing good. This is one of my most anticipated plants that I'm growing this year, so I'm watching him very closely. Which I shouldn't, because I know that the closer you watch a plant, the slower it's going to grow. But I can't help myself. Then back here, we have more cucamelons. This was the first bed I planted, and it's been the slowest to produce or to grow. But now that it's taking off, it is just growing so well. Look at this. One of the cucamelons even has reached all the way up over the line of chicken wire I have. And once it gets this far, I am just going to let it fill up this area if it wants to. And we're going to be picking a ton of cucamelons off of this little area. Right here we have 3 cucamelon plants. The 2 right here are doing really well. The one right here is determined to grow towards the chickens, so it keeps getting eaten on, and it's not doing quite as well. But that's what he chose to do. His life strategy was to grow to the chickens, while the other 2 are smart and have started to grow upwards. I don't know if you can tell, but the pumpkin plant, my Jardel pumpkin that I have planted in the corner over here next to my okra, has grown all the way out and has reached the trellis over here and is now growing up the trellis. So that's pretty neat. He didn't want the trellis I made for him. He didn't want the trellis that I made for him over there. He wanted the trellis that the cucamelons are growing up on. So I'm gonna let him do that. I think that's really cool. I honestly had planted too close together with all my squash anyway. So now he can grow up here and sit right next to those cucamelons. Maybe give me a gorgeous blue Jardale pumpkin. I do want to show y'all this last garden bed. My eggplant this week, in week 7, I've been just a little bit disappointed because we have a huge amount of flea beetles that I'm just constantly wiping off and knocking off of these plants. And I really don't want to spray anything, but it's just like they are munching on the stems and all of the new growth on these plants. I do have a flower right there, but I also see that they're munching on my little flower bed too. So I don't know what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna try to give these lacewings that I released a good chance. See, like right there, flea beetle. Right there, another beetle. Get off my plants, beetles. They're just everywhere. They love them. So I want to give a fighting chance for my lacewings to try to get in there and do their magic and eat on these. But I don't know what to do, if I just need to just keep knocking them off by hand or what. But yeah, they seem to still be growing pretty good. They are pretty damaged, but they're growing. I'm hoping we'll get some fruit off of these. I've been so excited about my Listata de Gandia eggplants that I have in this bed. You can hardly even see my basil anymore. And the flea beetles don't seem to be bothering my basil at all. So that's good. So he's growing beautiful. This is the dark purple opal basil variety. See, there's more flowers. We might get some eggplant. I'm just hoping they don't eat them all. I have my dark black Hungarian jalapenos and my 3 brown jalapenos, and it seems like my black Hungarian jalapenos are developing just a little faster. They have a ton of flower buds growing on these plants, so I'm really hopeful that we'll get some jalapenos pretty soon. The brown jalapenos, I've seen a couple buds, but I haven't seen any flowers open yet. I'm actually curious to see what color flowers they're gonna make. The dark, the Hungarian black jalapeno, they produce a beautiful purple flower. So I'm kind of curious, what is the brown jalapeno gonna give us? My 4 albino bell peppers over here are doing really good, and they're giving me really pretty white flowers. And these plants, even though they have curled leaves and even though they're a little stunted, they are bursting with flower buds. So maybe here pretty soon we're just gonna be up to our ears in bell peppers. Pretty white flowers they have. And this basil is doing pretty good too. My nasturtiums this week have been flowering. I got 1 flower off of this one so far, and I'm just getting a lot on this one. This is the Alaskan dwarf salmon variety of nasturtium. Those are just really pretty flowers. And then my sunflower in the corner over here looks like it's about to flower, and I just see little bud nodes on every segment and every armpit of this plant going down. So I am so hopeful that we're just gonna have a lot of flower buds on this stalk this season. And then last, but certainly not least, let me talk to you about my 6 Blue Beauty tomatoes that I have on this trellis. I did go ahead and go back and tie these more to the trellis. I tied them a couple weeks ago low at about that level, about probably 12 to 15 inches off the ground, where I just went and attached them to the trellis so that if it got really windy, we would still be able to not have them blow so much in the wind and possibly break their stems, because we see what happens when it gets really windy and they break their stems. So this week I went back and I tied them even higher as they grow. You just got to keep tying them and training them. The arm on this one over here that I have tied This one was growing out over the eggplant. So tying it has also kind of helped the eggplant get a little more sunlight, because eggplant is one of those plants that loves the heat, the hot weather, the sunlight. So shading it with a tomato is not what you want to do for your eggplants. So in addition to training them, I've also went ahead and fertilized the whole garden. I fertilized everything except for my nasturtiums, because nasturtiums, the more fertile the soil, the more rich the soil, the less they're going to flower, and you want these to flower. And so if you fertilize them a lot, they won't get as many flowers. If you fertilize them less, the more poor the soil is, the more they're going to flower. But I went ahead and fertilized everything else, and I'm seeing that this week all 6 of the plants on this trellis, all 6 of my Blue Beauty tomatoes in this raised garden bed are setting fruit. Look at that. We got some fruit. We have some more fruit. These beautiful tomatoes are starting to develop. And then over here we got some little ones. And even more right here. And they're in various sizes right now. They all started a little bit different timing. And anytime you see that purplish color on there, there's nothing wrong with these tomatoes. They're the Blue Beauty, and they're called that because anywhere where the sunlight is hitting on that tomato skin, it's going to turn a blue color, and that's why they're called Blue Beauty. So these tomatoes will ripen to red, but anywhere where that sun's hit it, it's going to stay that blue color, and it's going to look really, really neat. Overall, the tomatoes in this bed I think are doing the best, except this one right here is really short. It really hasn't grown very much height, if any height, in the past week. You see the tomatoes on either side of it are easily twice the height. And I also noticed that the leaves are curling. So I'm not really sure what's up with this tomato. It does have, I think, the most fruit that has sat on it. So I'm wondering, maybe I need to fertilize it just a little more, or maybe I'm just being a little paranoid and it just needs to have a little bit more time. It's an individual tomato in this family of tomatoes. So maybe it's just growing a little different style than the rest. I'm not going to try to think about it too much because it is still developing and those fruit aren't falling off of it. But I did notice that. The tomato right over there is like really short and bushy, and everybody else is growing nice and tall. These are all the same variety of Blue Beauty beefsteak indeterminate tomato. So I just thought that was interesting. Don't know why his leaves are curled. This past week was the first time that I used real fertilizer on any of my plants this year. I had been using a compost tea. I think I did compost tea twice. And this is week 7. And I started the week that I put everything into the garden. So these have been in the garden beds for about 2 months, and they got their first real round of fertilizer this past week. So I went ahead and gave them a little bit heavier dose initially, and I think I'm going to do a small dose probably every weekend from here on, just to help these guys, because they are going to start fruiting and putting off fruit. But overall, these tomatoes look gorgeous and healthy, and I can't wait until they get ripe enough to eat. So I promised you guys I was going to try to keep it short this week. That is the week 7 garden. Hopefully y'all guys will stay tuned and come back every Sunday. We post new videos, and I can't wait to show you what we're going to have in store next week. I don't even know myself, so I'm right there with you guys. I want to see what's going to grow here in the next week. Something that I do want to share with you guys that's a surprise that I've been keeping in for a while is tomorrow, which it's probably going to happen before this video even posts, because it usually takes like 15 hours for one of these videos to upload. By the time you see this, it's already going to be happening. We are adding a new animal to our homestead tomorrow. I say homestead because I feel like we are trying to have a mini homestead here, but this new animal is going to be an indoor animal. It's not hopefully going to be out here in the garden or hanging out with the chickens too much, but we are still going to try to socialize it to our chickens. But I can't wait for y'all to see. We're going to make a video about this new animal. We've been spending the past several weeks getting ready for this animal. We've been going and visiting it every single weekend for the past probably month and a half, getting to know it, and we just can't wait. It's coming home tomorrow. So we are so excited, and oh, I'm so tempted to just tell you guys already. That new little sweet animal is gonna join us. So I will keep updating you guys. Very, very excited. Keep watching here at Reach and Reverie. Y'all have a good night. Hey everybody, so I just finished recording the week 7 garden tour here at Reach and Reverie, and then I remembered that I have another plant that I wanted to introduce you guys to. I might not have put as much work into this as the rest of my garden, but it's still just as much a part of life here at Reach and Reverie on our little homestead. This plant was actually here when we moved in, and we have been watering it really well, but we haven't been putting really much thought into it otherwise. It's a massive pomegranate tree. And I just thought about that the other day, that even though this pomegranate tree was here when we moved in, and it's nice and big, it still does provide food here on our homestead. Look at those nice little pomegranates that are starting to develop. So we harvest these in the fall, but they do bloom in mid-spring and develop all summer long. And they're usually ready to harvest towards the end of summer and into fall. So really neat. A lot of times we lose a lot of these to birds. The birds love eating on these pomegranates. And when that happens, we'll pick them off, and last fall we were feeding the ones that had a little bit of bug or bird damage to the chickens, and the chickens just loved it. But all the ones that we do get, they're really juicy, really amazing, yummy, yummy pomegranates. See, here we have various stages of development. Everything from little buds to blooming flowers and up to developing fruit. So I just wanted to show you guys that it's something that I haven't really been featuring, but it's been in the background, and it's always been here in our garden. So in the fall, when y'all see me eating a pomegranate and you're like, where'd you get that from? Grew right here in our backyard. You guys are playing. They're all running around. We are getting this set up tonight. We are going to have a movie night with some friends over. So guys, let's stop playing. You're gonna be too dusty. Too dusty. We're about to go for a walk anyway. That's probably why they're hyper. Hey! Hey! That's enough. That's enough. Simmer down. Alright. I think it's about time for me to take these guys for a nice little walk. Y'all guys have a good night. I'll see y'all next week. Next week is the week 8 garden tour. We will officially have been doing garden tours for 2 months. I am so excited, and I just can't wait to see how much bigger everything gets and how much more fruit we have setting, and maybe even something we'll be ready to pick. I can't wait. I'm going to stay tuned and watch, and can't wait to show you guys. So y'all have a good night. You guys better stop playing. We're about to go for a walk. We're about to go.